English translation 566th contact Sunday, the 23rd of June 2013, 23:34 hours.
There you are. Hello, dear friend. I had hoped you would come here today. Was it possible that you could still discuss the matter? I find it a bit tiresome that I called you again and brought up a matter via Njana, which you had to discuss.
Greetings also, Edward. Njana has sent me all the things you asked her to do, so we have decided on them. And there is nothing to be sorry about, because it is always a great pleasure for me when I can come to you. Because we can often also talk in private, which means a lot to me, because you always find the correct words for me and my constant concern. As far as the matter you mentioned recently, I was unfortunately unaware of the whole thing myself, because you did not inform me that Brenda Winkler sells Figu books. Consequently, we could not discuss the matter. As a result, we only reached a unilateral agreement for the USA, precisely that concerning Michael Horn.
The reason why I did not tell you about it was because I too was not fully aware of what was going on in America. By mistake, I was of the opinion that the group of interested people over there, which seemed suspicious to me, was connected with Brenda Winkler. But this is not the case. Brenda runs a small private shop with Figu books and writings, as Philia told me today. Apparently, there are still printed books and writings that she sells, just as she also purchases them from us in the parent center and sells them in America. This may well be a good thing, I think, so she should also be allowed to continue to do so. I also suggested to Philia that Brenda could perhaps join forces with Michael Horn, who has been granted the rights of a national group according to your decision for America. Now, however, he and his wife Amy told me during his visit in May that they want to move to Hawaii, so I think it would be good if Brenda Winkler continues to sell Figu books and literature in America.
As you explain everything, Njana has sent me your statements, so we have decided that it should be as you yourself have also suggested. The woman should continue to run the small bookstore. And your idea that she should join forces with Michael Horn is also a good idea, although the decision to do so should also remain with her. Michael Horn is an individual with a special status, as he has been granted the rights of a national group, which allows him to translate Figu books and Figu writings and sell them in the USA. Unfortunately, when we first discussed the matter with Michael Horn, we were not informed of what would happen to Brenda Winkler, so we decided only on his behalf. But since you yourself were also not fully informed about the whole situation, we were not able to come to this additional decision. But it must be clear in our decision that Brenda Winkler should only be allowed to sell books, writings, and possible other materials, but not translations and printing of books and writings. Only Michael Horn can claim this right for himself, because we have granted him the rights of a national group in this respect. Under no circumstances should other private persons be granted permission for translations and the printing and sale of books and writings. Only old and still existing agreements and contracts shall be respected. But these shall only be valid for 7 years from the date of permission, after which such agreements shall automatically become null and void. However, this does not apply to the person Melissa, of whom you once said that she translates only excerpts from books, writings, and contact meeting reports for purely private use and for her group area. To my knowledge, however, there is no written agreement with her, only an oral agreement for an indefinite period of time.
I want to have a quick look. Just a moment, please. What you say is correct, because in my folder there is no contract with a Melissa. So I have to ask Christian about it, because maybe there is a written agreement on the other side, because I just looked through the most important things in my folder. Maybe I will look again later.
With what I have said, it has its correctness. And the agreement should only apply on revocation if things turn out to be wrong, disadvantageous, and unpleasant under certain circumstances. A contractual agreement should not be made, but only what has been agreed orally should be valid as long as it is responsible and no damage results from it.
Christian will be informed when he reads our conversation report.
That is correct, so you do not have to ask him specifically about it. But what I still want to say and have to explain regarding the USA, as in the past, we are not concerned about the USA because what has happened in the US over all these years is more than regrettable and therefore not worthy of our concern. This also includes the futile attempt to contact the US government through you as a mediator. But then impossible demands were made through LE which we could never make with the US. We do not know. Whether these impossible demands were actually made by the U.S. government or by Ellie himself and addressed to us through you, because our interest in making contact immediately ceased, and we were unable to get to the bottom of the matter. If, however, in the future a strong and integer FIGU grouping should be formed in the USA, then under certain circumstances we can decide again whether it can be valuable to accept a national group. However, the way things have turned out so far in the USA with regard to FIGU interest groups, the whole thing cannot be a success in terms of spreading the mission. And since we are not looking to the US, we also have no information on what is happening with regard to interest groups there. So we only know about the issues you tell us about, especially about Michael Horn and now also about Brenda Winkler and Melissa, because we are not really trying to find out about the mission, the spiritual teaching, and interest activities in America ourselves.
I know that. And I think that the majority of Americans, both male and female, is still far from being able to fit into a truly functioning order which alone can guarantee the good existence of a national group. Americans have a rather strange concept of peace, freedom, and equality of the human beings, of equality, order, harmony, and protection of all life. One needs only to think of the countless U.S. racists, such as those belonging to the Ku Klux Klan, the neo-Nazis, and the Aryan Brotherhood, etc., but also of the racist mercenary system which is officially permitted. This is in addition to the death penalty, which is still allowed and carried out in various states. And consider the torture and inhumanity in Guantanamo, as well as the mass intelligence and war crimes committed by American intelligence and military personnel in various countries of the earth, without the culprits ever being brought to justice. Similarly, as you once told me privately, in America, as you once said to me privately, the members of the Air Force, the Navy, and the regular military who rape their female comrades are not called to account and punished. On the contrary, the sexually abused women themselves are accused and sentenced in order to protect the officers, etc., who usually commit the rapes 1,000 times over. In addition, certain military courts also tell the raped female soldiers and officers that they have to accept the whole thing as a professional risk. But this is the reality of U.S. America, which acts as the world's police force and plays clean, while in reality it has a lot of stinking filth on various sticks. Of course, the U.S. population and the world public are not informed about this. And if something is leaked to the public, it is vehemently denied and the traitors are silenced, accused of being spies and traitors, persecuted and imprisoned for decades or even sent to the afterlife as assassins. This is also the case with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who publicly posted U.S. war crimes, etc. on the internet, which is why the U.S. judiciary wants to get hold of him in order to accuse and condemn him as a traitor of U.S. military secrets. And the same applies to the U.S. whistleblower, or ex-intelligence spy addendum, Edward Snowden, who is also being hunted by the U.S. all over the world because he, himself an ex-U.S. spy, has publicly exposed various U.S. and British intelligence activities.
We are also considering the reasons you have given, and what you said last with regard to traitors, etc., also corresponds to the undeniable facts.
Good to hear.
But it must be said that there are, of course, a certain number of righteous human beings in the USA who do not agree with the state. Military and human degenerations and false behavior, and who also behave righteously accordingly. Unfortunately, however, they have no power to take action against all the degenerate and wrongdoing.
Of course, one must always assume that, and they are not denounced. And it is only among the human beings of the United States of America that we may eventually find people from whom a real national group can emerge, if at all.
That is how it will be, if at all, as you say.
Exactly. But here I have another question which I would like to have answered by you. How must taking cinnamon be understood? If you want to lower your blood pressure, can you take large quantities of it, like a teaspoonful a day? And where does cinnamon actually come from? As far as I know, there are 2, 3, or even more places, and therefore also different varieties and qualities. If I remember correctly what was taught about it in school, then it was India.
Cinnamon is harmless in small quantities, rich in volatile essential oils contained in the cinnamon bark, which have a strong inhibiting effect on the growth of bacteria. The spice can also be used as an effective remedy for flatulence, constipation, gastrointestinal disorders, as well as for lowering blood pressure and also for treating general complaints. It is also a good remedy that can be used to stimulate the appetite and for good digestion. It should be noted, however, that cinnamon in larger doses is not harmless to the human being, but even unhealthy and even dangerous to health, due to the substance coumarin it contains. This secondary plant substance in cinnamon is not only harmful to the human being, but can even be life-threatening. When taking large doses, such as a teaspoonful a day, as you ask, there is a risk of cancer being caused and also of the liver being severely damaged and its function impaired. Although cinnamon alone is one of the oldest and most common spices known on Earth and has been extracted from the Ceylon tree for thousands of years, it has cost many human lives due to excessive use precisely because of the substance coumarin. The original genuine form of cinnamon comes from Ceylon, and that is where the genuine cinnamon tree, which is native to Ceylon, is also found. The real good cinnamon comes from Ceylon, or rather from today's Sri Lanka, which has a very fine aroma and little coumarin, although there is also the lesser so-called cassia cinnamon, which does not come from Ceylon but is grown in China and Sumatra. This cinnamon has a pungent aroma and contains much more coumarin than Ceylon cinnamon.
So the principle here is also that too much is unhealthy.
That is correct. But now, Edouard, dear friend, I would like to talk to you in a private way. It is always a special need of mine because that's why I also like to come here when you call me, because certain things have to be clarified. It is always a great pleasure for me to talk to you, because in the respective conversation with you, I can explain my...
Ptah, you are a very dear friend to me, and I can very well understand that you can also come here at any time on a private basis, without any things that need to be clarified for the existence and the circumstances regarding the Figu and its concerns. Your presence is always a great pleasure for me, and also our private conversations are always something special for me, and allow me to get away from unpleasant things. You know.
Thanks.